this little guy lived in the village where you either get stars or gray dots, depending on what you did good or what you did bad. And there was one person in the village who didn't have any dots and didn't have any stars, because she went to see Eli every day, and Eli was the one that made her, and he told her the truth about herself, so none of that stuff would stick. And that's what God wants to do with us. He wants to so knit our heart together with his heart that neither will the good stuff puff us up, nor will the bad stuff push us down, that we take everything to him, and all the events in our lives become just a moment in time. Sometimes it's a good moment, we want to remember it. Sometimes it's a bad moment, we don't want to remember it. But we don't let it make global definitions of who we are, how much value we have in relation to another person. Does that make sense?
We've been studying about adverse childhood experiences and about how if a child goes through a very difficult experience, but they have a caring adult in their life, that experience doesn't scar and mar them the way it does for a child who has no positive person in their life. And the resilience of that child has to do with a supportive person being there when the trauma happens. And so it's like that with God. He's that support person.
Exactly.
He's always available. And even if something happened to us and we thought God wasn't there with us then, he can tell us now. Recently, I was struggling with a memory I had when I was about 6 or 7, and a gang of boys knocked me down after school into some eucalyptus leaves, and I can still remember my face touching the leaves, that flashback like you were talking about, going back in time. And I can remember one of the boys putting his knee really deep in my right groin, and I passed out. The pain was so hard from that. And I thought that God wasn't there. And for years I was kind of angry with God, like I was asking for your presence to help me, and you weren't there. And God told me recently, he said, I was there just the same way that I put Adam to sleep to take the rib out and make Eve. I put you to sleep during that event. You know, I didn't remember anything. After they pushed me and I fell down, I didn't remember anything at all. And in psychiatry, they call that depersonalization, or they have other names for it. But God says, no, I just put you to sleep. And now that I'm an adult and I have the resources and the word to know that my worth doesn't hang on those kind of events, then he's come and just held that spot.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so that caring adult is Jesus. And he's
right.
And he's there, even if he wasn't, that we didn't perceive him back then, we can still invite him into that place.
Exactly. And it takes away our fear of what might happen in the present. Because we know that in the same way that we have found him to be faithful in places where he thought he wasn't, he wasn't there, we thought. So he can work in the now to move that forward, that we don't have to fear. So part of the way we work with this, always a reason, is we ask the Lord to help us to be alert, to look for the reasons. Sometimes the reasons are really, really painful. We don't want to go back there. I've had places where I just thought, I'm not going there. If I start crying, I will never be able to stop. And yet I had caught a glimpse of Jesus, and I wanted the healing, but I wanted him to just go, ta-da! And he didn't want to do that because he wanted to heal the place in me. He wanted to heal the reason that still had power over me, and that it had power over me in the first place. And I found some of those places where I after a while, I realized the Lord really was asking me to let him into those places. And even then, it was like, well, but I don't, it was like it was an automatic door. I didn't have the volitional power to say, oh, okay. So I would just say, Lord, I don't know how to let you in, but I want to let you in. And I want you to work in such a way that I don't just close it up and stuff it back down again. And he has some pretty amazing ways of opening those things up. And I have one story of a time when he put me in a place in a church with some really, really loud music. And I was just kind of in this little corner with a whole bunch of people around and right against the wall. And this place opened up in me, and I was just wailing at the top of my voice, but nobody could hear me because there were so many people and the music was so loud, and I was just hunkered down. And when I started crying, I thought I was never going to stop. But by the time the song service was over and the preacher stood up to preach, it was done, and I felt like, wow, wow, Lord, what have you done? It's like spring cleaning inside of my heart. And so now I'm not so reluctant when I see that he's going in a direction that I haven't gone before. And I'm able to invite him to come in, even if I'm a little bit scared, because I know that on the other side it's going to be so great.